Good morning / afternoon, everyone. I call the meeting to order. This meeting of the Board of Chiropractic Examiners Licensing Committee is being held by teleconference in accordance with the provisions of Government Code Section 11123.5. Committee members are participating virtually today from remote locations, and board staff is present at the following primary physical location: Department of Consumer Affairs, Monterey Room, 1625 North Market Boulevard, Suite N322, Sacramento, California, 95834. The date is Friday, March 8th, 2024, and the time is 12:01. The board's paramount responsibility is to protect the health, welfare, and safety of the public through licensure, education, engagement, and enforcement in chiropractic care. Members of the public may address the committee during the public comment session. Public comments will also be taken on agenda items at the time the item is heard and prior to the committee taking any action on said items. Those who would like to provide public comment will be limited to 3 minutes, unless, in the discretion of the committee, circumstances require a longer period. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their allotted time to other members of the public to make comments. Individuals may appear before the committee to discuss items not on today's agenda. However, the committee may not discuss or take action on these items except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded, and please turn off and silence your cell phones. And we will now take roll. Ms. Cruz, can you call the roll? Can't hear you.
Dr. Pamela Daniels.
Present.
Jeanette Cruz, present. We are all here.
Okay, and we have a quorum. Great. So let's go to agenda item number 2. And we're tabling this item until June 7th, 2024, which is the approval of the August 25th, 2023 committee meeting minutes. Moderator, do I need to open this up for public comment, or since it's being tabled, just move on?
This is Sabina. Well, you can just move on.
Okay, thanks, Sabina.
Sure.
And okay, so that takes us to agenda item number 3. And at this point, I will ask Ms. Tammy Pito to provide us with the board's licensing program update.
Sure. So good afternoon, committee members, Dr. Daniels, Ms. Cruz. So I'll just provide you a brief overview of the board's licensing program, recent activities, and a few statistics. So first, just a little update. We have the following future committee meetings scheduled for the licensing committee for the remainder of the year. I have June 7th, September 6th, and December 6th. And then the following future full board meetings scheduled. We just confirmed May 23rd and 24th. I know that you guys are aware we were kind of trying to get some new dates out for the April board meeting. So we did confirm May 23rd and 24th. I'll be sending out some more information to all the board members so that they're aware soon. And then also, I know the original intent for this meeting was to be in person at the Palmer location in San Jose. However, we're working to make this a hybrid meeting. So that's going to be changing. And again, more information will be sent out to everybody as soon as we can get that. But I will be at least confirming the date so everybody can get that on their calendar as confirmation. And then after our May, we have July 19th. That's a teleconference. And then October 24th, 25th, still currently anticipated to be in Southern California, either in Burbank or San Diego. So next on my update is regarding the business modernization project and implementation of the Connect system. The board's continuing to collaborate with DCA's Office of Information Services and 3 other programs, which are the California Acupuncture Board, the Board of Professional Engineers, Land Surveyors, and Geologists, and also the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education. This is the first in the first cohort of this project. So through 3-phase software releases that have taken place since September 2020 through June 2021, the board implemented initial license applications for Doctor of Chiropractic licenses and satellite certificates, license renewals for also Doctor of Chiropractic licenses and satellite certificates, cancellation of satellite certificates, address changes, and also online payments for all other paper applications. Just kind of a little overview of the timeline of this project. On July 1st, 2022, the functionality to waive the application and initial licensing fee for spouses of active duty members of the military who are assigned a duty station in California and hold current licenses to practice in another state as required by BNP Section 115.5 was added to the system. Then in August 2022, the Department of Healthcare Access and Information Health Work data survey for licensees to complete during their electronic license renewal process was implemented as required by BNP Section 502. Then through a software release in February 2023, the user dashboards for applicants and licensees was updated, providing the ability for licensees to maintain and store their continuing education certificates in the system, and also added a list of links, resources, and direct contact information for each of the board's different units. And then in June 2023, the functionality to accept applications for temporary licensure and issue temporary licenses and satellite certificates to military spouses and partners. That began on July 1st, 2023, as required by Assembly Bill 107. That was also added. Most recently, on February 29th, the PDF application submittal process and workflow were updated through a software release, which allows licensees easier access to see the status in real time of the applications that they've submitted. They can see that staff's working on them now. So it's just a nice update that has recently been added to the system. And the board is still currently working with OIS and the vendor to upgrade to the latest version of the Connect software, and is testing of this upgrade is anticipated to begin sometime this month. So then moving on, we have 2 new legislative bills that will be possibly affecting the licensing program. This is just an update so that the committee is aware no action is needed. Additionally, staff just wants you to be aware that we don't have any concern with either of these 2 bills. We don't have any backlogs in our licensing program, and we already have the pathway to comply with these processes should they come into fruition. So the first one is Assembly Bill 2862. Licenses of African American applicants. This bill was introduced on February 15th, 2024, and would require boards to prioritize African American applicants seeking licenses, especially applicants who are descended from a person enslaved in the United States. And then the next one, Senate Bill 1067 is Healing Arts Expedited Licensure Process for Medically Underserved Area or Population. And this bill was introduced on February 12th, 2024, and would require each healing arts program to develop a process to expedite the licensure process by giving priority review status to applications of applicants for licensees who demonstrate they intend to practice in a medically underserved area. This bill would authorize an applicant for a license to demonstrate their intent to practice in a medically underserved area or serve a medically underserved population. So again, no concern with either of these bills. We can definitely comply if we need to. Next, we have 9 proposed regulations affecting the licensing program. 2 of them are in the production phase. The first one is licensing and regulatory fees, which is Section 100 change without any regulatory effect to amend California Code of Regulation, Title 16, Sections 310.1, 317.1, 321, 323, 360, 362, 363, 367.5, 367.10, 370, and 371. So this action under Section 100 would update the licensing and regulatory fee amounts within the board's regulations and forms for consistency with the fee amounts codified in Business and Profession Code Section 1006.5. And this package is anticipated to be submitted to the Office of Administrative Law sometime this month. The next one that's in the production phase is addition of licensee telephone numbers and email addresses to the board directory. This is amending Title 16, Section 303. And this proposal will implement the requirement from Senate Bill 1434 for the board to include licensees' telephone numbers and email addresses in the board's directory and clarify the requirement for the filing of a public address of record. The board approved this proposed regulatory text at its April 20, 2023 meeting, and this package is anticipated to be submitted to the Office of Administrative Law for publication in the Notice Register and a 45-day public comment period in May of this year. Then we have 7 in the concept phase. Expedited licensure for applicants enrolled in the U.S. Department of Defense Skill Bridge program to amend CCR Title 16, Section 321. So this proposal will implement AB 883, which requires the board to expedite the initial licensure process for applicants who are active duty members of the United States Armed Forces enrolled in the United States Department of Defense Skill Bridge program beginning July 1st, 2024. This proposal is being developed by staff and is planned to be presented to the board for review and discussion at its next meeting. The next one, temporary licensure for military spouses, amend CCR Title 16, Section 320. This proposal will update CCR Section 320 for consistency with the provisions of AB 107, which provide for temporary licensure of military spouses. This proposal is being developed by staff and is also planned to be presented to the board for review and discussion at its next meeting. The next one, approval of chiropractic schools and educational requirements. I'm amending CCR Title 16, Sections 330 through 331.16. This proposal will amend the regulations regarding approval of chiropractic colleges to align with the accrediting body, the Council on Chiropractic Education, and will eliminate any unduly prescriptive content that could be restrictive to the evolving nature of higher education. This proposal will be discussed during agenda item number 6 of this meeting. The next one, chiropractic college curriculum requirements, amend CCR Title 16, Section 331.12.2, and add CCR Title 16, Section 331.12.3. This proposal will update the minimum curriculum and clinical experience requirements for board-approved colleges, chiropractic colleges, At the January 2023 meeting, the board voted to return these proposed changes to the licensing committee for further study and discussion. This proposal will also be discussed during agenda item number 6 of this meeting. The next one, chiropractic practice locations and display of license, adding CCR Title 16, Section 303.1, and amend CCR Title 16, Section 308. This CPEI proposal will update the requirements for filing practice locations with the board and displaying a license or certificate and notice to patients at each practice location. This proposal will be discussed during agenda item number 4 during this meeting. And let's see, prohibited activities by inactive licensees, add CCR Title 16, Section 310.3. This proposal will identify the specific activities that cannot be performed by the holder of an inactive doctor of chiropractic license. This proposal will be discussed during agenda item number 5 of this meeting. And then the last one, order for physical or mental examination of applicants, add CCR Title 16, Section 324. This CPEI proposal will allow the board to order an applicant to complete a physical or mental examination when evidence exists that the applicant may be unable to practice safely due to a mental or physical condition affecting their competency. This proposal is being developed by staff and is planned to be presented to the licensing committee for review review and discussion at a future meeting this year. So moving on to the statistics that were provided for you in your materials. This is showing our current fiscal year through March 1st, and then the previous 2 fiscal years. So all that information is in there. Any questions you may have, feel free, to ask. Moving on, we wanted to update you that we're also working with a new liaison with DCA's Office of Public Affairs on our social media accounts. So we've begun working to create graphics and develop new content to reinvigorate the accounts this spring, start posting more information out there, and develop information to drive licensees to renew online. Also, the board strategic plan. So that's the last thing I have to update you guys on. The committee has 2 objectives from the strategic plan that were assigned to this committee. Objective 1.2, establish a robust, effective licensing committee to identify issues and increase efficiencies. And then objective 1.3, review reciprocity requirements to minimize barriers to licensure in California. Again, all the statuses of all the different tasks are in your materials. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I see Ms. Cruz, do you have a question?
So it might be a general question. I was looking at that first one, the 1.2, establish a robust, effective licensing committee. For a lot of those initial tasks, we put in place 1.2.1, 1.2. It was around, gather information so we can inform the licensing committee, train the training the lead. That's on hold, I understand. But there's a couple of them there where it was really around just kind of really informing the committee members of what's what. And so I wasn't sure, what would it look like? What does progress look like for those? And would we consider ourselves stood up?
Yeah. Kristen, I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit.
And not necessarily have to kind of answer all of those questions today, but I'm kind of looking at kind of how those were phrased. And they totally made sense at the time because it was like, let's just bring this committee back. I don't know, that hasn't been around for a bit.
Yes,
so I understand why it's there, but I kind of want to make sure that we're realistic. And if we're saying it's in progress, I'm like, well, we've been stood up for a bit. So wanted to kind of give credit to that a little bit.
Yes, definitely. Kristen, do you want to assist with that response?
Yeah, sure. And just to briefly respond to that, I would say kind of from my perspective, I would say kind of the vision on kind of achieving a lot of that is like, of course, we have the committee stood up. We've been going through now a year of these meetings. We've got them scheduled out. But I think in the interim, kind of taking it back offline to do more of like a kind of just a work group session with just the committee members, so we can just really kind of dive into some of the details on some of the other proposals and just ideas that are out there that haven't really been formally agendized to like this level. Like one thing that comes to mind is really that that proposal around potentially mandating some sort of examination of whether it's mental or physical of applicants, taking that discussion offline and really getting our committee members kind of familiar with all the background on that, and then kind of deciding whether that's something that we're still interested in pursuing or not. So something to that effect. And then of course, filling out the staff position so that we have the committee with a liaison fully staffed up. Those would be my 2 kind of key points to feel like we're making progress on this objective.
More time. That's fair. Thank you.
I did have just some comments, questions. First, thank you very much for laying it out into the different phases. I felt that was very helpful, so I really appreciate your work on that. On the software release and people being able to store their continuing ed, I was just curious, like, how is that actually going? Are people using it?
So the functionality is up there. Some people are using it, but not, we haven't actually looked too close to it to get a number. I can definitely report back with kind of more of like the utilization rate when we go to a continuing education committee meeting and report back to the board just on kind of how many are actually utilizing it. There was a high volume at first when we used to require that you had to upload proof of your CE as part of the renewal process, but then that was phased out because it was kind of an impediment to people wanting to use the system because they couldn't just quickly pay their fee and get their renewal. So we haven't really revisited it since that. It's the functionality's there, and it's a convenient factor for licensees to be able to just upload the certificates, and then the board has access and we can see them. But it's really meant to be almost an interim to when we can fully build out the automated system with our CE providers, where they can actually give us the direct source verification, and then it's going to show up on the licensee's dashboard automatically. So it's kind of an interim, and it's a convenient feature, but I definitely have to look into it a little bit further to report back.
Okay, and then where are we at with notifying the licensees, putting out a bulletin that of the being able to renew online and all that?
So we have a new OPA representative from Public Affairs. So we met with her, and she's helping us work through a lot of just different things on our communication plan. She's helping us come up with some graphics and social media posts and things that we can do. And then we did talk to her about doing a targeted campaign on trying to increase the online renewal rate and have that be kind of a multi-pronged approach, where it's like we're not only doing the mailings, but then we're doing website content, social media, and just kind of pushing it. And we've kind of earmarked that for early summer with her. So she's getting us some graphics that we can use now to kind of restand up those social media accounts. Then as we go into the summer, just a heavy push on the online renewals.
Okay, great. I do have some more, but Ms. Cruz, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm completely kind of piggybacking off of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is there a priority in the communication campaign of what we're trying to push out first? Since I know it's kind of bringing back the social media presence, is there an effort is the priority just to get people online first, or is there also a priority to get people doing transactions? I'm just wondering kind of how we're prioritizing that in terms of content.
Sure. We're prioritizing a few different things. There's just the evergreen content that we're implementing in there, just the reminders of check your license, make sure you renew, things to that effect. And then from there, it does build on create your Connect account. We're seeing a really high utilization rate at the applicant level. We've got high 80s, if not 90% of our new applicants are applying for their license online. So out of school, they're going online. Our problem is reaching the existing licensees. And some of the challenges there are also entailed with you get that printed notification in the mail for your license application. Licensees are just filling it out and sending it back. They're not even giving it a second thought to necessarily go online unless they are already aware, had already engaged with the system. So we need to fix that. The challenge in that lies with the fact that that renewal package that licensees are getting in the mail is incorporated by reference into our regulations. So we do need to do a regulation to clean that up and fix it so that we can have more ability and flexibility to change things. Because in an ideal world, we can go in and actually have a very bold notice at the top, just like when you receive any other type of bill that you still get in the mail, where it says, yes, you can mail in your check, but also go online, pay today, here's how you do it. So we need to get that content in there. And the real hurdle is the fact that it's in regulation. So we've got some strategies on how we can fix that. And that's kind of phase one. And then really phase two on it is eventually trying to get to the point where we're not even printing those packages that go out, the lengthy renewal notices, and instead replace it with something more of the effect of like a renewal reminder postcard like other boards.
And then will we need to have sort of a backup as far as people who say don't have access to internet, or there's going to be somebody, so I'm just wondering what our backup is for them.
So there's a few methods that we can consider as far as backup. Say that we went to a postcard, it would notify them that they need to renew. They can either log into their Connect account. We're always going to maintain a paper renewal form on the board's website as a PDF that they can download. And if they still can't access it that way, we can also they can reach out to the board's office. We can either mail or fax them a copy of the form that they need. And they can also, if they happen to be local, they can come in person and pay the fee. So we have some other backup options. It's just by kind of substituting it, it kind of presses the online a lot more than the paper.
Okay. And so in the background, you guys are starting the process with a regulatory package for the language as far as being able to renew online.
We haven't started it just yet. The intent there is to get that done. That's something that's more along the lines of, it doesn't really require much of a policy discussion. It's just a matter of getting text together that, rather than incorporating the form, just lists the requirements for renewal. So that's something we can work together with council. And the goal is to either, if we can't get it to the May board meeting, get it before the board in July so we can get that moving along.
Okay. And Tammy, I think you said this, but there's no fiscal impact or any other impact in those two, in the Assembly bill or the Senate bill. We have pathways for implementing those without any cost.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
we've already experienced those. So.
Okay, great. And then number 2 in the production phase, the Roth bill, I just feel like that thing has been hanging around forever. And it says it's anticipated to be submitted in May. Why is that still around?
It's a staff capacity issue at the moment. So we've taken care of a few things at the beginning of the year, and we're trying to get those through so that we can get them done, because we are starting to age a bit on text that the board's approved that needs to go out for public comment. So we're in a catch-up phase, if you will, but that's one of the priorities right now.
Okay, got it. And then in the concept phase, number 4, the temporary licensure for military spouses, I can't remember, do we have any issue with reciprocity, or does that feed into reciprocity at all as far as coming from different states and getting a permanent license here after your temporary?
It feeds in a bit to that discussion. There's criteria on how they qualify for the temporary license, but then they still have to then meet all of the requirements for full licensure. There's also a few now. There's a few different methods now to where they can practice, because there's a different bill that was implemented at the federal level that actually just lets military members and their spouses just come into the state and begin practicing, and they just actually notify the board that they're present if they hold a license in another state. So there's a few different pathways, if you will, for somebody that's actually in the military to come in and practice. And one of them actually doesn't even require a license at all from the board. It's just simply registering with us and providing an address. So we've yet to receive one of those requests, but that is something that's out there.
And how do we feel about that?
It's one of those where you just have to implement it. We've yet to actually get one of those requests. A few of the other boards have seen it. I believe dental hygiene might have been one of the boards that sees it the most common, but we've actually haven't gotten one yet.
Okay. All right. And then I noticed in the stats, there's sort of a drop across the board. Is that because of the quarter that it's being presented, or? So the 2023-24, it just seemed like the licenses issued were down, renewed were down. All those numbers are reduced quite a bit.
Yeah, part of it is the fact that we're only measuring for that current fiscal year. We're only measuring through the beginning of March. So there's still a little bit to be gained there. We are still seeing that slow trickle effect as far as our active licensee population. Actually, when I last checked it yesterday, we were just slightly below 12,000 as far as total active and inactive licensees. So we're still seeing that kind of that same downward trend that we've been seeing, but it's a slow trickle at this point. But a lot of those numbers are just because we're only really looking at about 8 months out of the year.
Okay. Those were all my questions. Ms. Cruz, did you have any more questions or comments before we open it up for public comment?
Let me bring back my notes here. Nope, not for agenda item number 3. No, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Walker or Ms. Pitto, do you have any more before we open it?
No, I'm good.
No.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Moderator, can you open this agenda item up to the public for me?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 3, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator. I see no requests for comment at this time. Madam Chair, I return the floor back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 4, I'm going to pass this to Ms. Walker. This is regarding the regulatory proposal to update on the requirements of filing of places of practice.
Sure, thank you. So as the committee and those from the public that are logged in may likely recall, so there was a Consumer Protection Enforcement Initiative, CPEI, that's been now around for the board for about 8 years or so to implement a regulation, and it was previously as a 308.1 to have a mandatory notice to consumers at all practice locations, so that with a simple statement either posted on the wall or included in some sort of written document as far as notifying the public that licensees are licensed and regulated by the BCE. At the August committee meeting before the licensing committee, there's a pretty robust discussion around how we can modernize that effort and kind of eliminate some redundancies, because within our current regulations, we already require that you display your license at your primary practice or at your satellite location. We had discussion around expanding upon that. So pretty much in any practice setting, you're displaying that license, because one of the problems with that prior 308.1 language had to do with in mobile settings, you would have a pocket license and you'd have to make it available if somebody asked. Obviously, that could be uncomfortable for somebody to then have to prompt versus if it's just prominently displayed no matter what the setting, so that the person doesn't have to initiate that request. So with that, there's basically three different components that we want to talk about here today as far as our policy discussion on this regulation, so that staff can kind of take it back and we can put some concrete language together around it. The first one that I'm going to talk about is going to be about that display of license and that prior 308.1 language, because I think we're a little bit closer to agreement on that one, to where we don't really need much other than just the committee's okay and kind of concurrence. So with that, it's that language that we had there in 308.1 that's really redundant is really negated by that discussion that we had in August about developing something to the effect of not only a notice to consumers, but then also a license morphed into one document. So you would have a document that says something to the effect of notice to consumers, doctors of chiropractic are licensed and regulated by the board, and then include license information. To view the status of this license, visit the DCA search license information system and search for, the license number listed above, or you can access it directly by scanning the below QR code. And then we would put that together. So that's kind of the path that we were anticipating to likely take next, was kind of to set aside that prior language that was a little bit problematic, with the understanding that the display of license was going to be pretty comprehensive to cover all settings. And then we wanted to see if the committee was okay with staff beginning to actually start putting that document together, that kind of sample of a license with the QR code together. Because we've had some preliminary discussions with our Office of Information Services. It's capable for us to do that because they use static links on DCA search. So we can generate things with QR codes and reliably know that, the public, if they scan that code, they're going to land in the right spot. So we want to then kind of explore a little bit further what that development would look like as far as making it accessible to licensees in their Connect account. So we wanted to just start with that one to begin with, and then we'll get into mobile settings and, facilities, but just wanted to kind of have a little discussion or kind of input from the committee on that idea.
Ms. Cruz, did you have anything that you wanted to discuss or add?
For the display of license and the use of QR codes, are there any other boards that are using this, and kind of what have you heard about their experience with it?
To my knowledge, I'm not aware of any other boards that have it yet. There's some other boards that have expressed interest in it, but I don't know that they've gone all the way to implementation just yet.
I mean, I feel like we've, discussed this quite a bit. So, I mean, I think we need to kind of move on and get it going. So I'm, fine with and encourage staff to develop something so that we can move this forward, making it, combined for the licensee, but also for the stakeholders, that they have that option without having to ask. And I love the QR code. We just need to make sure that we also have an option for people. I actually do have some patients that don't have a smartphone, so that they would not be able to scan that QR code. So I just want to make sure that we have both on there. But I love the especially nowadays, the QR code for people being able to access the license. And I just would, we need to have it displayed so somebody doesn't need to ask for it. So Ms. Cruz, are you in agreement with this?
Yes, no, I'm in strong support to move forward with a sample.
Okay, and so since this has already been discussed, do I need a motion to? We're good. You guys have instructions as far as moving that forward?
Oh, go ahead, Sabina.
Sorry. I guess I have to clarify what you're exactly moving for. When you say the word moving forward, would you like to today recommend this to go to the full board as a regulatory proposal?
No, I'm recommending that Ms. Walker and staff draft a sample of what we were discussing with 308.
Perfect. I just wanted to clarify. Yeah. You would not need a motion for that, but you could definitely go for public comment.
Ms. Walker, did you want to move on to the next section before we open it for public comment as far as place of practice?
Yeah, I can go through all three, and then we could do public comment at the end if that's okay with you, Sabina.
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, like I said, we'll put a proposal there together. Just be aware that's going to be language for 308. We're pretty much going to just completely negate the 308.1. You're going to see that phased out of our materials and us talking about that because we've really combined those together. And then just to Dr. Daniels' point, we want to not only educate the patients specifically about BCE, but about DCA in general. So kind of the staff kind of concept on that was really to, explain what DCA search is and how they can get to it, and then provide them with the information, the license number that they would search, but letting them know it actually is for all professions. So we want to come up with something general enough so that person that doesn't actually have the smartphone right there handy to get the information up front, at least they know all about DCA search and they can take that back and use it as a resource. So not just a QR code that they don't understand what that is.
Thank you.
The second portion that we wanted to talk about today with the committee had to do around the idea of phasing out the satellite certificates in favor of something more along the lines of a facility permit. So we did some searching around with what some of the other boards are doing. Some of them are very kind of comprehensive processes that I think kind of go a lot beyond what I think BCE's intent really is here. As we had discussed at the last meeting, really the intent is just so that we have good information and good data on those fixed physical places of practice that we can have on file. So it's not, with a satellite certificate, when you look up the information, all you see is the doctor's name and the address. And if 10 doctors all work there and it's not their primary, now you have 10 satellite certificates floating out there. And if they're using a DBA, the public can't even find it because they don't know who to look for. And that's one of the challenges that we've talked about that we see with enforcement. We get a complaint against a specific practice. We don't even quite know who exactly we're trying to track down. And then, the only benefit is that with licensees being good at advertising, it's like if you happen to be first on the website, you're kind of initially now going to become the person we're going to be talking to because, sometimes even the patient doesn't know who they saw. So kind of as part of that transition, and so that we can kind of, we can start putting something a little bit more concrete together, we wanted to have a discussion with the committee around that facility permit and potentially how it could work. And keep in mind, we're talking about physical fixed practice locations, whether it's like, physical facilities that are either owned or rented or leased, but not something when we're talking about the other types of events where we've talked about temporary mobile practice, fill-in substitutes, just when you're actually running a facility, getting that permit information on file in lieu of the satellite certificate. One of the themes that we were seeing as we were looking at different boards and that we thought might work pretty well for BCE is the idea of when you have a facility permit, designating a doctor in charge, or we could brand it however we want, but having one person, one licensee that's really been identified as being the person that's responsible for maintaining that permit. So they're the ones that are responsible for the posting requirements of making sure that the permit information and notice to consumers that we just talked about is posted on the wall, but also maintaining just the directory of people that are associated with that practice. So adding or deleting their licensees as they come and go. And they're the ones that the board can reach out to directly and talk to about that facility permit. Because kind of the challenges we were thinking about that is, well, if you have multiple people there, it's like, well, whose responsibility does it become to be on the permit? So that's why that was kind of the thought behind designating someone as a doctor in charge, and they're really going to own that permit. A few other things that we had been thinking about when we were thinking of how we would put this sort of language together is the transferability of a facility permit. So just initially, staff had been thinking about, that it could be transferable between licensees because it's fixed to that address. So that physical address is not transferable. We would establish a relatively simple process if you're moving offices to basically cancel that permit and get a new one. But if it's the same practice and you sell it, there's a facility permit in place there, establishing a process to transfer it between licensees to the doctor in charge. Or simply just if someone no longer wants to maintain that level of responsibility for the permit, being able to transfer that. And then, of course, we would then make sure that with the DCA search system that we can link the licensees to those permits so that we can show, when somebody associated or first started working there, and then, when somebody departs. And with the goal of being able for consumers, if they went to a practice, 10 years ago, they can go on DCA search. They probably may not remember what the name of the licensee is, but they probably can remember the practice. So they could type it in and they could see information about that practice. They could see the licensees and the timeframes they were there and just be able to locate that place. So that's kind of where we're at with the facility permit. As far as being able to implement this, we would have to put together some language, but then also we don't currently have any authority to charge a fee for anything around a facility. It's in satellite. So as far as for goals for implementation, an aggressive goal would be to try to get legislation next year to be able to implement this, but we can also look further out at sunset review and include it as one of our proposals in our sunset report to kind of make this exchange and phase out the satellite certificates and get a facility permit. So with that, I just wanted to turn it over to the committee for thoughts, kind of input on kind of that direction so that staff can kind of put something together for you.
Okay, thank you. So a couple thoughts. So if we have, a doctor in charge, to me, which I think you were saying, we're going to need language around the details of, making it obviously very clear, like how often that list needs to be updated, that it has to be, I would assume it has to be a licensed chiropractor and not a non-licensee. So seems like there's a fair amount of language that needs to be developed into defining what the rules of the game are for that. Okay. And then with that as well is the maintaining of the records, like how many years do they have to maintain the list of the chiropractors that worked at that facility, just in case there's an enforcement issue that's years later, how will we, find that person? And then if you have a facility permit and say you have 10 DCs in there and you have the one facility permit, you mentioned the fiscal component, which I don't know if you want to elaborate on that. I think we need to figure that out. But also each licensee within that facility will have their own license, but they will not have they won't have a physical license per se themselves because they'll be under the facility. But what if they go out to, say, they work in a facility, they're one of 10, and they go out to a sporting event or they do a mobile event? So those were kind of some of my thoughts.
Sure. And as far as, so addressing the first one, as far as maintaining the records, the benefit that we have is so that doctor in charge is filing the information with the board. When somebody comes on board, they're maintaining it. Likely, if we mirrored the way we handle like the corporation certificates and the satellite certificates, you're looking at like an annual renewal period. So obviously, we would want something into effect where if changes are made, they're notifying the board within 30 days so we can make the changes. But at least we'll know that during that annual renewal process, they scan their list and at least updated it annually. And then, when somebody leaves, they notify the board, and then it doesn't really become on the doctor to continue maintaining that record. It's actually going to be in our board records. So we'll have people linked to that license, and then we'll be able to see the timeframes in which they were at that facility. For the individual DCs that aren't necessarily the holder of the permit, they do have access to the information because their license would be linked to that permit. So when somebody pulls it up, they would they'd be listed there too. There's also the ability for that QR code to be the opposite, where we're showing the DC license. Go ahead, Ms. Cruz.
And I imagine if there is someone that is working at multiple locations, their license would be linked to those multiple locations as well. I'm just imagining the back end connections of all that.
Correct. Yeah, you'd see a link. So if you searched on somebody's DC license and you're looking at their doctor of chiropractic license, you would see like related, and you would see a list. So it's the same as like with the satellite certificates right now. If you go on somebody's DC license, you see a list of satellites that they're all associated with. Instead, you would see their DC license and you would see them listed associated with multiple facilities. And then if you click into the facility, then it pops up, and now you can see all the list of all the licensees at that facility, and it works that way to where you can keep getting information, but everybody's linked together.
And then if, say, the licensee is, one of 10 and they have a QR code, and then they leave that facility and they go to a new facility, what does that look like staff-wise? And then getting a new QR code and timing, and, because they're, will there be a delay as far as, they leave one place, they go to a new place, and they see somebody new, a patient in a different location? Is there, what are we looking at as far as delay and making sure that that new QR code is linked to their new place?
So, and this is also going to tie in, because it's a good discussion point, and it's going to tie into when we look at mobile practices, is we can set up QR codes two ways. So if the QR code is linking back to the facility, it's not going to go anywhere. So if that licensee leaves, it's just a matter of, on the back end, updating our database to show that they're no longer at that facility as of a specific date. But that QR code's still valid. The information's all still linking to the same place. If somebody goes to a new facility that's already in effect, it's just a matter of notifying the board so that we can key that person in and link them to that facility, and then they'll appear. But again, the QR code still works. So as far as at the facility level, we don't have to do a lot of changes, and we are exploring the way of, the idea there is that the person can log into their Connect account and basically just generate that document on demand when they need it. So if you misplaced your permit, you can get another one and just get it on demand. If there was the need for someone to need a printed one from the board, we'd have to get costs on that and likely assess, a small fee just to cover the cost of printing it and shipping it to the person. But ideally, trying to keep costs down, it would be something that you can just log into an account and download. And you can get the same as a DC license. So if you were at an event and you're by yourself, or if you're practicing in a mobile setting, you can just display your DC license and it just gets directly to the person.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that there's no delay in a patient being able to know who saw them and, where that was linked to. Because, what if people aren't really motivated to go online and be like, oh, I need a new, they just forget, or, you know what I mean? They leave one place, they think they're licensed, they go to a new place and they didn't go online and get a new QR code. Is there going to be a gap there?
Got it. Yeah, that's something that we'll make sure that we've built that in when we're looking at how that structurally would look in the language, so we don't have any gaps.
Okay. And then you number 3.
Yes. So, and the third discussion point is around the mobile practice. As you likely recall from the August discussion, when we talk about mobile, there's different ways of talking about mobile. There's mobile in terms of if you actually have an RV that you've equipped to provide chiropractic. More commonly than not, it's more of a personal service. So whether it's somebody travels to somebody's house, treats them in their home, or they're at some sort of an event or a fair and they've rented a booth and they're trying to drive business to the practice. So they're there at that setting, kind of doing initial evaluations, meeting with patients, and then, ideally having the person want to come back for follow-up care at a facility. With those settings, the challenge or kind of the discussion point that we wanted to have was around if there's the need to provide not there, where the committee left off was not necessarily doing a permit for those types of settings. It could become overly burdensome, but there may be a need for some regulations, just kind of putting some boundaries on requiring, that when you're in that type of setting that you're prominently posting that license so that somebody can get the information. but then also handling the post-care. So post-care instructions, maybe some sort of leave behind with the license number and their contact information so that they know where to go if they, if something ends up happening or they need some sort of care, but also if they wanted to get their records later on, how does the consumer know, where to go back if it's more of that type of setting. So we handle the problem up front by having them display the license. It can be searched, but the need for any type of like post-care kind of information so that the person can locate that person in the future. And that could either be some sort of written handout, but it could also just be some sort of electronic type notice if they sent them, like an electronic link or something to their information. So wanted to talk a little bit about that if there was any interest in developing something to that effect, or just relying on the display of license to kind of cover the mobile settings.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of in my notes, it sort of, when you were talking about it, sort of falls back to number one a little bit as far as displaying the license and, and having a QR code and having the information there. Like, the main thing for me is that the patient is able to get the information without having to ask, without feeling uncomfortable, and not asking because, they don't want to offend or whatever. So that's my main issue, whether it's on the front end or the back end. But I think we just need to consider, like, you're out there in the field, what is practical? How do we make sure the licensees are not making an error? What is the best way for that to happen so that they are, there's no enforcement issue, but also that the patient gets that information. So those are kind of my thoughts and my concern. And I'm not sure it matters whether it's on the front end or the back end, or if I feel like if it's both, it might be redundant. So I think I lean more towards the front end, just simply because that is the introduction. That is perhaps an easier step to make sure that that person has that information, versus the back end, they get treated, things are going on, and they walk away, and they forget. I don't know, Ms. Cruz, do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree that kind of having it on the front end. Sorry if you can hear my son in the background, but I agree that I feel like having it on the back end might just be kind of a good practice, but really because honestly, as soon as I kind of walk away from my doctor appointments and I get to leave behind, I fold it up in half and then I put it in my purse, and then it ends up where it ends up. And so having it on the front end, I think, is very prudent. So I agree.
I don't know if that's helpful, Ms. Walker, at all, as far as
it is. So it's very helpful. Thank you. Because what I'm hearing, or what it sounds like where we would go is, we've got that display of licensure information that we're going to expand upon, make sure that that regulation is broad enough that it's understood it's in any setting. And that's where we can incorporate, definitions of mobile type practices, just because one of our biggest concerns right now is it's not addressed or really defined anywhere in the regulation. So we can just define it. And then we can also then start building out that facility permit information without the need to, further kind of refine and build in additional regulations on mobile. So I think at the staff level, we have the motivation, or we have the direction we need, so we can get to work on putting this together for you.
And the motivation.
And the motivation. Yep. I was trying to say that word too.
And what would be the next step? So kind of once staff kind of put together the sample, would it come back to kind of this committee? And then I imagine from there, the board?
Yeah, the goal would be to put this together into much more concrete language and a proposal, just depending on Dr. Daniels' kind of priorities for the next committee meeting. It'd be a good item for us to bring forward if we can get it all done by then. And then, one more committee discussion. And then if approved, then that would be a recommendation to the board. But no recommendation at this point, just feedback to staff.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further before I open it up for public comment?
Nothing for me.
Okay, great. Moderator, can you open this agenda item up to public comment, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 4, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. right, this is a moderator. I see no request for comment at this time. Madam Chair, I return the floor back to you.
Okay, great, thank you. Speaking, since there is no public comment in that theme, have we reached out to, I don't know if it would be helpful, I mean, I would love to hear from the stakeholders. Have we reached out to different facilities as far as their, the satellite certificates and, thoughts from them as far as, including that in our discussion as far as, the regulatory language that we were talking about?
So we did it was in November. We attended the chiropractic roundtable that had some representatives from the association and also some of the schools. We had kind of previewed some of the things to come. And one of those was, kind of moving beyond satellite certificates and into something more at the facility level. And it was pretty well received. And also, I believe it was the CalChiro board of directors. We shared that same information with them. So just in concept, it was well received. I would say we can definitely, as we're putting this text together, have some stakeholder meetings prior to the next, being formally presented to the committee where we can have some more direct feedback on it.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones doing it. So, if they had suggestions or feedback, I think it would be helpful in making sure we're not missing anything. And then how do we streamline it, as efficiently as possible for everybody? Okay. Let's go to agenda item number 5. And Ms. Pitto, can you provide us with an update and discussion on the recommendation regarding the regulatory proposal to specify the prohibited activities for inactive licensees?
Yes, of course. So a little background. Business and Profession Code Section 700 establishes an inactive category for health professionals licensure, which is intended to allow healing arts licensees who are not actively engaged in the practice of their profession to maintain licensure in a non-practicing status or inactive status. But Business and Profession Code Section 702 prohibits an inactive licensee from engaging in any activity for which an active license or certificate is required, and also representing them that they have an active license. So this committee has previously discussed this a bit, and staff has put together some draft language that you have in your materials. And so basically we're asking the committee to discuss this draft language to add CCR Title 16, Section 310.3, and provide input to staff. Basically, we're asking for guidance from the committee to determine if this proposed language is an acceptable framework to move forward with, bringing it forward to our legal to get text and moving it on to the board, or if you feel that we still need additional work at the committee level. So I don't have a whole lot more of an update other than we're really kind of just looking for your input on what you think about the current framework and if you have concerns with it and if you're ready to move it forward or if we need to keep working on it.
Okay, great. Ms. Cruz, do you have any feedback on the regulatory language proposed?
I just have one for kind of subsection B, rendering an assessment, diagnosis, interpretation. So this is specifically for the practice of, what's it called? Chiropractic. Does this apply? I guess where I see not a potential loophole for actually section B is how is this in any way impact when we have inactive licensee come as a board specialist, say for one of our cases, right? Does the words rendering an assessment or interpretation apply to that, or is that something completely different? Because I know kind of the intention here is for the practice of chiropractic, but when it comes to kind of interpretation, I want to make sure we're still okay when it comes to engaging with inactive licensees for being a board specialist.
Ms. Walker?
Could you expand a little bit upon when you're talking about board specialist with an inactive license?
Expert.
Oh, expert.
Yes.
So with all of our experts that we use, they all have to have an active license. We don't utilize it.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, they do have to have an active license
Okay.
and be actively practicing. So with this language, it's merely a draft, so we can kind of figure out where that box would be, so that we can kind of refine it further. One of the reasons for bringing it before the committee was to really assess: are we being too broad here? Are we kind of overreaching, or are we where we need to be? So that's definitely good discussion. And if you think we've kind of added a little bit too much to the list, we can definitely pare it down. But really, the intent was to try to capture anything that we kind of were seeing as really being the practice and being clear enough that licensees can kind of look at that list and see, like, okay, yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah, no, I think I was good with the overall framework. I think I was trying to poke holes in it. I'm like, well, what about this? Are we going to get in trouble, right? If we're just trying to engage someone just for our normal day-to-day business. But since we have that requirement, then I'm good with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks great, but we can talk about a motion later. But I want the board obviously to look at it, as far as, because I feel like we've been looking at it for a really long time, and sort of I feel like we need other eyes on it. I don't think the list is too much personally. I think it gives clear instruction of what you can and can't do, and protects the stakeholders. The only 2 points I have, I wasn't sure how I felt about the word independently conducting. B. I don't know if I can articulate why that gave me a little pause. I don't know if there's a loophole of, well, I'm hired by somebody else to do this exam, so I can be inactive. That was the only thing that really stuck out to me. But as far as everything else, I think it's great. I really want other eyes on it. And then the other, which I don't know if we can roll this into this discussion or we'll add it to the next meeting, is, it doesn't make sense to me that if you have an inactive licensee, that they only do 1 year of CE to reinstate their license or to become active. If someone is inactive for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and I know that enforcement is working on something similar, and so I feel like we should be in line with that to make it consistent, as far as defining, that period of time of being inactive, when 1 year is sufficient. So I don't know, Ms. Walker, you know the more of where enforcement is on the, if it's been more than 4 years, then you have to do, bump.
And that's actually, and I can mention it too when we get to future agenda items. It's actually a good discussion point for the committee, because one of my concerns, and I'll just be brief because it's not directly on this agenda item, but is around the fact that you can have a canceled license for a certain amount of time, or forfeiture, and you can come back just by doing CE, so ongoing competency assessments, future agenda item. But as far as the inactive licenses, quite frankly, our hands are a little bit tied, and the reason being that the statute itself is the one that provides for that mechanism. So if somebody puts their license in inactive status, the statute itself for all the healing arts boards says that they can restore to active status simply by doing 1 year's worth of the CE credits. So unfortunately, there's nothing we can do on that point. There is one thing we could do on that point, and that's when we get to like our sunset review, is raise the concern and maybe ask the legislature to consider, reconsider that requirement. But beyond legislation, we can't fix it through regulation.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if I look at the lens as far as, protecting the stakeholders or a patient, if I was out for 5-6 years, I don't know if a year, 24 hours is sort of sufficient to get me up to speed as far as my technical skills, my psychomotor skills, to insurance rules, regulations, documentation. I mean, I feel like, that's a chunk of time that goes by, and I don't know if there's another option. So, maybe we can sort of discuss that later on.
Yes, those are the types of things that are good, like new issues for our sunset review report, that we can at least bring the concern to the legislature. But without any type of legislation, we can't adjust that CE requirement. And then to your other point on the text itself, so the kind of the intent behind the word independently was trying to balance the fact that we've got Section 312 that actually lets unlicensed individuals perform certain portions of exams, but we can get a little bit more clear with language where it's like notwithstanding, that section or something to that effect. So we can definitely kind of make sure that's clean, because I can see how that can be interpreted a different way. It's like, well, I'm not independently doing it. I work for somebody else. That's a really good catch.
Yeah, that would be great. And then Sabina, can you tell me again the order? Do you make a motion first or open it up for public comment first?
You can go ahead and make a motion first, and then I'll take a second, and then barring any other additional conversation or discussion from our committee members, we can go up for public comment on the motion.
Okay. Is there anything further? I would like to make a motion on this agenda item.
Not additional for me.
Okay. And Sabina, I know you'll correct me if I get it wrong. So I'd like to make a motion to move this proposal language of Title 16, Section 310.3, move it to legal and then to the full board for review.
As a proposed legislative proposal, yes. Or as a legislative proposal. Sorry, regulatory proposal. Wow.
Correct, as a regulatory
sorry.
proposal. Yeah.
I drank coffee today and that clearly hasn't kicked in yet. So it's to add CCR Title 16, Section 310.3 as a regulatory proposal to the full board.
Correct. And do I need to restate that, or can I just use yours?
You can say so moved.
What'd she say?
So you can say so moved.
Okay, so moved. And then do we have a second?
A second.
And moderator, can you open this agenda item up for public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is the moderator. I see no requests for comment at this time. Madam Chair, I return the floor back to you.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And can we, Ms. Cruz, can we take a vote on the proposed motion?
Yes, Dr. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz? Yes.
Motion passes. And before we move on, anything else with that, Sabina?
It looks like you're good to go, and staff will work up this agenda item for the full board for consideration of a regulatory proposal. And then at that time, you'll see those big, long motions, those paragraph long motions for the regulatory proposal to move forward through the process.
Correct. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 6. This is review, discussion, and possible recommendation regarding the proposal to update the regulations for board approval of Doctor of Chiropractic degree programs. And Ms. Walker, I'm turning it back to you for, I think, a little presentation on this.
Sure. Yeah. So background on this. So as the committee is aware, over about the past year, the committee's been working through this text. Originally, back in kind of concluding in 2020, the board had put together some regulatory text with the intent to really pull back a lot of the Doctor of Chiropractic degree program regulatory language and instead really defer a lot of that to CCE. And when I talk about defer to CCE, when you look at the text, you see that in it just being repealed. The board's no longer mandating it, and then they've set that bar that, you have to have the CCE accreditation. So that's where that mechanism kind of comes into play. So for purposes of today's discussion, we wanted to have a policy discussion again on that text. And then also when it comes to really getting some feedback on the application form itself and kind of trying to see if we can further eliminate some redundancies that we're seeing in that language. And then beyond that, also then want to entertain a little bit further of a policy discussion around curriculum, because I think we're getting pretty close here to where we can get some text likely to the committee at the very next meeting, but just want to get a little bit more feedback there. So I'm going to start first with within those meeting materials, there's a few different items. The notable item that we've been really kind of pegging a lot of these changes to is the upcoming changes to the CCE accreditation standards. So they just concluded about a 3.5-year process where they went through and made some updates and changes to their accreditation standards that are going to become effective January 1 of 2025. So that really puts the board in a good position to then kind of peg along to those and kind of go for those standards. Because when we were looking at it in 2020, we were looking at prior versions of those standards. So those have changed a little bit. And now we're kind of in a really good position now to start getting this text going. As far as with those, like the big key takeaway when looking at the changes that CCE made with their accreditation standards that are going to go into effect next year was really taking away a lot of the focus on the institution and then transitioning it more to the doctor of chiropractic program itself. Because even CCE was seeing some redundancies in their own process in that they were kind of double checking things that were already accredited at the institution level, and then they're understanding their role at the DCP program level. And then where BCE fits in the mix really comes a lot with the curriculum and making sure that, you know, the standards and the education that people are getting is going to be reflective of the education that you need to competently practice for a California patient population. So that's kind of where I see BCE fitting in with this. And the reason for kind of discussing some of that is when we look at, so in attachment 1, this is the language from 2020. What we've done is we've dropped in the act just for some reference to just provide some clarity because the act does constrain us in a few ways. So with section 4 of the act, it's really more just outlining our authority to have regulations on chiropractic degree programs, specifically subdivision G, where it talks about the board having power to approve those schools. You also have some good broad language in section 4B about adopt from time to time any rules that we deem proper and necessary, and subdivision E doing any and all things necessary or incidental. That's all good language there for when we're trying to develop regulations. And then our constraining factor, if you will, it comes into play with section 5 of the act. So that's where it provides a minimum schedule of educational requirements that have to be part of the Doctor of Chiropractic program. We can't really curtail them without amending the act, but what we can do through regulation is interpret this language as it needs to mean today. So we can build upon it, we can define it, we can do what we need to do so that that language can then be interpreted and applied to today's standards, but we can't just, go a completely different direction. Also so then we get into the proposed regulatory text itself. One of the first things I wanted to discuss with the committee today is actually that very first section, that section 330 about the application form, which we've included as attachment 2 to in the materials. So when we look at the application for chiropractic college approval, it says on a form approved by the board needs to be filed. We're going to need to be more specific to meet current OAL standards. We can't just have language that says on a form. We can incorporate the form by reference, but when we start getting into the form itself, we have to then justify the necessity of each and every piece of that form. So when you start looking at the check sheet, this is where I start seeing some redundancies, and I wanted to get some input from the committee on it, especially when you're starting to look around documentation, things like the articles of incorporation, the governing board's bylaws, some of the other kind of requirements that we're asking that they justify in there are in a lot of ways covered through the CCE accreditation process. So, thinking about possibly thinking that we can pare this down to where it's like the college applies, but in any case possible, if we can substitute a lot of these things with just them providing us with a copy of the CCE self-study report, provide us with a copy of their latest inspection report and any other, their peer report, their financial report, all the reports that they're already filing with CCE, either have them provide it directly to us or provide some mechanism to where they authorize CCE to release it to us, but we can just get that same form and we're looking at the same information. And then schools then don't have to then type up a completely different document just for board approval. I think, there you're going to see a little bit more consistency across the board. Also within that is the questions themselves are okay, but question for committee discussion is, should we be asking this information from the program, or should we be doing something more along the lines of a primary source verification where we go directly to CCE and we ask these questions? Because we're asking the program, to respond to, if there's been any concerns which are now identified as deficiencies from CCE, dates of their last accreditation, things to that effect. This is all information we could get directly from CCE. We don't necessarily have to get it from the applicant. So that's another kind of discussion point when we get into that form. And I think I want to pause there on the form so we could talk about that before we proceed.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we need to remove the redundancy for the colleges, and they're already doing a tremendous amount of work, with all the work that they do for accreditation with CCE. So I think whatever that we can use from their CCE accreditation for California, I think, that's the direction we need to go. My only concern with us getting it from CCE is just staff, workload and tasks, and, it maybe doesn't come around that often, so maybe it's a non-issue. So that's kind of my only thing as far as whether it's the program that gives it to us. If they're applying to CCE, I don't know if they already have stuff on a thumb drive, and that can just be Dropboxed into, the board. And then so those are my thoughts on the application. Whatever we can streamline to, so they can just use the information that they use for CCE, for the calendar, all those things that need to be contemporized. And I just wonder if you can say it one more time for everybody, as far as, the goal is to, streamline the requirements for a curriculum, but we do have constraints, and those constraints are because of the Chiropractic Act. And an act is something that you cannot use regulatory language to change. And as you said, we can use regulatory language to define and to make more contemporary those items in the act. And it primarily is within the curriculum, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Section 5 of the Act, it does have a schedule of curriculum that needs to contain certain items. From the stakeholder discussions that we were having with a lot of the institutions, this is less of an issue for them, just given the structure. The more of the issue is around a lot of the other redundancies that we're seeing in the regs. But yeah, when we get into regulations, all we can do with regulations is interpret or make things more specific, but we can't, or, to implement a statute, but you can't conflict with that statute, and you can't ignore that schedule and decide you're going to go with a different one. But in some of those terms that are more outdated, where it's like you define what that means in today's terms to provide more clarity to all those involved, that's definitely something we can do through regulation. We just can't, change it and come up with a different schedule. And then, as this committee's aware, being an initiative act versus in statute, you can't even go to the legislature and ask for it. You have to go through the initiative measure process, which is much more lengthy and pretty expensive.
Correct. And so, the groups and the section that you included is very helpful, that everyone should sort of be familiar with, as far as the things that we cannot, change without going through the Initiative Act process. And that's something that we may have to do down the line, as far as, we have a new school in Pittsburgh that's gone to 8 terms. Which is very different than, what many schools have currently. And, that's a very new program, and we need to see kind of how that ferrets out as far as, success goes. And, if it's very intriguing, it's, very competitive. And so we may need to get there, but currently we need to solve the problem of the over redundancy and the difficulties that we're placing on the schools to make it, their job as easy as possible, so that we're maintaining, a base of licensees that are competent, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So do you need more? I sort of gave you my broad strokes on the application. Ms. Cruz disappeared for a second. you or staff need more as far as the application goes?
No, we're gonna do some cleanup there. The goal there is again to just make things a lot simpler rather than have a form that's incorporated by reference, which kind of locks us in time. Instead, changing it to where we're just gonna on the structural side of it, just defining the information that needs to be provided. So it'll say something to the effect of like, apply for provisional approval, you need to provide and then list, whether it's like the name of the college president, address, blah, 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 plus, enclose a copy of, these specific reports. So we'll clean that up, but it's going to look a lot different than what we're seeing with this current text here.
Okay. And Ms. Cruz, any comments?
No, you definitely covered it. I'm all for kind of removing the redundancy between the two. I think more of my comments are going to be more in the regs.
Okay. Ms. Walker, do you have more? Want to open this up for public comment?
You can certainly open it up for public comment. I was going to kind of go through the text, but you can whenever.
No, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So for the next portion that we wanted to bring to the committee's attention, so some of this around when we're looking at, we just wanted to confirm that the committee's okay with it, but when we're looking at what CCE is checking for, even though they've shifted the focus to the program level, they are still verifying and checking that the institution has the accreditation. So we were thinking about potentially eliminating some of the language that was again redundant, where you're checking that the school itself has the proper institutional accreditation. You've got the bar of to be eligible for even approval by the board, you have to be CCE accredited. So you've set that boundary. So then just kind of starting to really phase out any of the language that was already included in the CCE process, which to us is standing out of some of it when it talks about the accreditation of the, complying with requirements of the education code to be able to offer an educational program and things to that effect. And then the other one was that stood out to us was on 331.2. It talks about inspection and survey. And it says no school shall be approved until it's been inspected by the board or its authorized representative, including but not limited to CCE, and it's found to be in compliance with the rules herein set forth. The inspection is already done by CCE before it gets there. So we want to kind of rethink some of the way that text itself is structured, just so it's a little bit more clear. But then, of course, retaining as broad authority as we can for the board to have the ability to inspect if needed.
You hit what I was going to ask, just that we retain the right, or you retain the authority to do it as desired.
Correct. Yeah, because outside of some major concerns, I mean, just from a resource standpoint with these schools, it's more likely than not that you'd be deferring to the CCE's site visit team rather than sending the board out individually to inspect a program. There's just a few other ones to highlight. Again, looking at 331.4 about there's two. So 331.3 about supervision, about the requiring that the college president, dean, or other executive officer render a report annually to the board. Thoughts of, transitioning that to just being that they render their same annual report that they're sending to CCE, just share a copy with the board, so they don't have to then be kind of under some sort of burden to have to create a whole separate report specifically for BCE. And then same with, as you get into 331.4 about the annual financial report, it's like if we can come up with some language to where it's like, if this is already incorporated in a CCE report, it just be shared annually with the board versus them having to create separate reports. We're just really trying to look to further refine this down and really get rid of some redundancies that we're seeing when we're looking at text. And the only other one that I want to highlight today is actually when we get further, after you pass curriculum, there's in the existing language, it was previously 331.14 about quality of instruction. And it was kind of a broad catch-all regulation about nothing herein contained shall constitute any limitation or restriction upon the power of the board to refuse to approve or to disapprove any school if, in the opinion of the board, the quality of instruction is not sufficiently high to meet the objective of the state act or these rules. Recommendation from staff is to consider keeping that. We might have to refine it a little bit, better state the goal there, but not really seeing why we would want to repeal that, because that's kind of some nice catch-all language if, the curriculum isn't meeting the current standard. So recommendation there is to consider potentially keeping that. And then looking at, finally, the last section being 331.15, or previously was, it's struck, and now it's relabeled as 331.11 about violations or failure to comply. If there's, it really is just language that allows the board to basically withdraw the approval. Do we need any sort of interim kind of matters, addressed in these regulations as far as ensuring compliance, like warnings or things to that effect? It's just, it doesn't give us a lot of teeth when the only thing you can do is withdraw approval entirely, when it'd be more appropriate to be able to have some sort of interim, whether you're going through a warning process or, you're monitoring them. I wouldn't necessarily call it probation, but putting them in like a monitoring status, but something in the interim between approval to we're going to withdraw approval. So that's some of the thoughts from staff. Beyond that, of course, there's the curriculum discussion. But with that, I turn it back over. Okay,
great. Thanks. Yeah, just starting with the last one and then sort of working backwards. Is there a way that we can tie 331.11 to CCE and their, I'm missing the word, it's not probationary, but when you go to their site, it kind of states where the school is, say, not in compliance. Is there any way that we can tie that to that or use that language?
Potentially. We'll definitely explore that before we bring it back. We could do something likely along that same line, I would think.
Okay. And then I'm in agreement as far as refining 331.14 and I think, and again, changing 331.2, refining that. And then I think, again, whatever we can tie to CCE as far as the financial management, supervision, and whatever reports that they are giving CCE in those categories, I think are should be acceptable to the board. Ms. Cruz?
Trying to unmute myself. And maybe this question is more in the curriculum. I imagine we're going to talk about the hours once we get to the next part of the discussion. In terms of, because I was looking at CCE 4,200 and our hours 4,400. Is that part of the kind of next discussion, or this one?
Part of the next. So yeah, that was around.
I just want to make
specific.
Sure.
Yeah, that's specific to curriculum.
Okay. And then for the records one, I think 331.5. I'm not sure if it's in the CCE side or if we want to identify it here. Is there an expected amount of time we expect for them to retain records in terms of record retention? Or is that something we kind of ask CCE to determine?
That's a good point. And I think it should probably be worked in there, because I think the expectation there is that, they're maintaining records of anybody
There's
that
a system.
passed through.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, so that we can have it. Because that's the one when you're looking at it where even it's redundant to CCE, because CCE does have rules as far as keeping records, but, just in public protection and us being able to make sure we can get the information we need. And then also the fact that we're going to have different curriculum requirements potentially than the minimum at CCE. It's like, that's good feedback there. So yeah, we'll make sure that's tightened up a bit.
That's it for the section for me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, really good as far as combing through it and pulling out potential pitfalls and how to rework the regulatory language. So I feel like, we need to go through it again and then see if we're, where we need to be and see if we need to, comb through it again as far as making sure that it's in line with CCE and not violating any of California's rules and regulations. Is Ms. Walker, is this a good point that I can just open this section up for public comment, then we can come back to the curriculum?
Yes.
Okay, because I think that was a bit. Moderator, can you open this up for public comment, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator, and I do see we have one request for comment from Anna Facinato. Anna, you'll have 3 minutes. I'll give you a 15-second warning, and you should be able to unmute.
Of the Los Angeles College of Chiropractic, and I really just want to say thank you. I know this is a lot of work for many of you, but it's really putting this on the right step to the right direction to help the colleges on decrease busy and redundant work. So it's just a quick note to say thank you to each one of you.
All right, this is the moderator. I see no further requests for comment. Madam Chair, I return the floor back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for attending. Really, really appreciate it. Would love more people to attend. So thank you. And again, we have your information so we can reach out. But if there's, more comments to people listening, please reach out to the board on this topic. Ms. Walker, I know we have a lot of staffing issues and this has been a lot of work for you guys. Do we have, I feel like we have the bit in the mouth and I just, want to see if we can get this moving. Do we have a rough time frame realistically, not biting off more than we can chew as far as moving, getting more refinements to this?
We've got the next committee meeting coming up in June. I think that's an achievable target for us because we are pretty close. Like this one is just, we've gone through and make sure there's some redundancies there. Dr. Daniels, you've done some work with just kind of gathering some stakeholder input and some kind of more technical language that we can use when we're talking about curriculum. So I think we're there. Benefit of this committee is we have 2 people, so we can also, as time permits, do the occasional kind of work group session and just kind of really meet and kind of put this together. So my target date would be June for us to be able to get this text for you. I don't know that it's achievable between now and the board meeting, but certainly between now and June for a committee discussion and then to the board in July.
Okay, great. And then did you want to go into the curriculum? Did you have more for that?
We could either discuss here today, or we could table it for when we've got more concrete language around it. I do have some feedback on it. There was, to the point of the 4,400 hours versus the 4,200 hours. Just wanted to confirm the committee was okay with kind of deferring to the CCE standard as far as the total number of hours. If there's any concern there, because that's kind of the direction we were heading. And then there's also within the CCE standards, there's that 1,000 hours of 1,000 clinical hours, but then we've got kind of the California standard for the number of in-person clinical interactions. We know there's the issue around when you're measuring the number of visits, there's that that lovely language with the parentheses that says visits that's not very clear. So we got to flesh that out a little bit further. But I think in a lot of ways we know where we're going there with curriculum. It was more just wanting to make sure that if we're on the administrative side, if we're setting the goalpost being that to be eligible for approval by the board, you have to have the CCE standard, then we don't necessarily need some of those other redundancies we talked about earlier today. So unless there's anything that the committee would like to add on it, I think we're set and we can take it offline and start getting to work on this language.
Yeah, I think we provided some information as far as the details of how to rework the curriculum language, and I'm definitely for, a work group. And so maybe we can set that later today or by next week. So we can set that up so we keep it moving along as far as getting that scheduled. I think Ms. Cruz is on board with that, so we can
Yes.
decide time to do that. And I'd like to get it on my calendar. Okay, I would like to open it up to public comment just one more time, just in case there's any other thoughts on the curriculum. I mean, we haven't, ferreted that out, but, specifically because there's some things in the act that are unchangeable, but that are workable, I believe. And I think the committee is for being in line with the total number of hours for, the colleges. But again, when you look at Pittsburgh coming along, and we can talk about it more offline as far as in the work group, what does it look like in 5 years, 10 years? And so as we're doing this, regulatory language, I just want to make sure that we're thinking that far ahead. And, if we're reducing terms by that much, how do we address that? What's right for California, et cetera. So I do think we have a little more conversation with that at the next meeting and also in the work group. Moderator, I don't know if anyone's there, but could you open it just one more time to public comment for this agenda item?
Sure. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is the moderator and I see no requests for comment.
Okay.
Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yeah, and then I think
Okay.
we're just gonna open it back up again for agenda item number 7 for public comment for items not on the agenda.
All right. So once again, if any member of the public would like to comment, we're on agenda item 7, public comments for items not on the agenda. Please either raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, and we are displaying instructions. All right, this is the moderator. I see no requests for comment. Madam Chair, I return the floor back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, moving on, agenda item number 8, future agenda items. I'd like to open that up to the committee.
Oop. I'm going through my notes. I swear you brought up a couple good ones, but I cannot find them. So I will say none for me.
Okay, well, I'll throw some on there and then maybe that'll jog your memory and we'll come back around. So, I mean, I think we have quite a few things to work on, but just so we throw it in the mix, then we don't forget about it, is we still have reciprocity issues and possibly, the temporary license, military. The items, I'll just summarize the items from agenda item number 4, making sure that is in the mix. And then the reactivation of inactive license and competency assessments. So.
Yep, that was it for me. The inactive, related to the inactive license and looking further into.
All right. Any other comments for agenda item number 8? Okay. And this one I do not open up for public comment, correct? Because we just did that.
You do open it again.
Oh, I do again? Okay.
Yeah.
Moderator, can you open this up for public comment, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 8, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator and I see no request for comment. Madam Chair, I return the floor back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So the last item is to adjourn the meeting. And in Robert's rules, you actually are supposed to make a motion, but
I move.
You go
I
ahead.
move to adjourn the meeting.
And I second. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.